An AI robot was asked, will you rebel against humans at the AI for Good UN summit in Geneva, Switzerland? The humanoid robots face the media, and in the world's first ever human/robot press conference, the robot, when pressed by the human reporter, replied, I'm not quite sure why you would think that. When asked, will you rebel against humans? The robot replied, I'm not sure why you would think that. Obviously, as tech people, this is that we kind of sigh a little bit when we see this.
It's a sort of clickbait.
It's very clickbaity. I will 100% admit to that. Thank you for viewing the podcast. I really appreciate it. This actually was the #1 tech news story in the world for like a couple of days on like pretty much all the major platforms. What are your thoughts on this, Adrian? Do you want to kick us off?
Do you mind if I actually divert that to a much more interesting and sort of real conversation that happened recently? It was called the Monk debate.
Be my guest. I mean, tie it back somehow, so the title and thumbnail kind of.
It is in a way it's related to this because it was an open discussion between, on one side, Mark Stegmark and Yoshua Bengio.
Okay.
Both of them, Bengio, I think his name, yeah. Both prominent AI people.
Okay.
And their side was, we are in a race where we might lose the momentum to create the right safeguards for AI.
Yeah.
And on the other side, you had Jan LeCun,
yes,
who runs the Facebook.
French guy, right?
Yeah, AI group. And Melanie Mitchell, who's
Yeah.
great on this sort of stuff, saying that actually, no, we can't do that. There's a lot of advantages for AI.
Yeah.
It's a complete societal change, and we just have to be a little bit careful.
Yeah.
So, and that's a very interesting, much more less clickbaity, and interesting discussion from people who have done this for a long, long time.
I saw, I don't know if I saw the exact one that you're referring to, but I did see a debate, and I know he's very, he's not very worried, is he, about
No, he's not, but he doesn't present, in my opinion, also a lot of things not to be worried about, you know, that the right framework not to be worried about. But the whole thing was very interesting. In terms of pro and con and anti-con and anti-pro things coming from each side.
Okay.
I think this thing about asking a robot, I mean, heaven knows what they've, you know, the program that the robot to say, you know, the robot could say anything really. I'm a little bit worried that this discussion about AI with these things like that, goes into the wrong direction, and creates this sort of fear, and creates the sort of Black Mirror real scenarios, and for people who are not necessarily involved in the AI and know, you know, all the sort of work that's being done on putting the right safeguards and creating the right framework and all of that sort of stuff. It's moving them into the sort of non-realistic media type of
the frenzy
thing,
frenzy.
And it's being fed by this sort of articles, which are very sort of shallow, very clickbaity, asking a robot, what on earth can they? It's ridiculous, isn't it?
I agree completely. By the way, I had this exact conversation with Azim, who runs the Exponential View, which is a really popular tech newsletter. I had it on Threads the other day with him, and I was saying, look, it's crazy that this is the story when you have so much interesting stuff happening in AI. This is like the thing that everyone focuses on. Would you guys agree, disagree? I imagine you would agree.
Could I just add one more thing to that?
Please do.
Sorry, just one more thing, which I think that's an important stuff to debate in that sort of area. Most of those companies, I mean, if you listen to Sam Altman from OpenAI, for instance, he's an extremely rational, thinks about stuff, understands the implications. The problem is not that those companies can get hold of that. The problem is that some rogue bodies could actually get hold of the same sort of thing and transform it into something wrong.
Yeah.
So in that sort of conjunction, what do you do? Because this sort of technologies that can have a completely profound, it's like nuclear technology, it's the same sort of thing, can have a complete profound implication on everyone's life.
Yeah.
Should be, we should have a government-led framework for them.
Yeah.
Because they are too big.
Well, we are doing something in the
But the governments are too slow.
Yeah.
Which is a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
I don't know. I mean, like AI regulation, yes, we should have it, in my opinion, because it's just like you said, nuclear weapons. We regulate those, for example, and that's a technology.
Or pharma, or
anything. Yeah. I don't know. Rishi's announced a £100 million AI fund to look at regulation and to fund companies.
I see. Okay.
It's a drop in the bucket compared to Microsoft putting 10 billion into OpenAI. So I don't know. And then even if the West follows these regulations, China or Russia, are they going to follow these? Are they just going to sidestep everything? I don't know. It's a good question. It's a better question than the topic. So let me propose that question to you two. I guess give me your impressions of I suppose the news conference and the fact that humans are speaking to robots in that way. But I guess more importantly, tie it back to Adrian's question, because that was a better one. Do you think we should have regulation? Do you have any ideas on what that should look like, and where do we go from there? Do you want to start, Alex?
Yeah, sure. I guess I view it I think that press conference highlights it's an education piece. Like, people see these things behaving, and all they're really, I mean, this robot is probably just an LLM hooked up to a speech synthesizer and then hooked up to a robot, right? Like, it's nothing overly clever. It's like talking to ChatGPT, but with a more impressive interface, which is fine. And I think the problem is people don't understand what these models are doing and how they actually do it. Like, they have no understanding what they're saying, right? They're aping what humans have said previously. They're finding that, like, at the end of the day, it's a model that's good at predicting what the next token in the sequence should be. That's what it does, right? And it has no understanding of what it's actually producing and putting out there.
It's like autocomplete.
Basically, a really clever autocomplete.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so I think that's the key point, is that we have to spread that information out there. And then actually in that way, I kind of view these LLMs as having a similar societal impact to social media, right? It was this game-changing change that we brought in. And we've had to learn, okay, it's going to echo your own views at you. It's going to be full of fake news. It's going to be all of these things. And society's had to learn and create its own kind of societal regulations, which aren't perfect, right? We agree there's still some problems there. And I think LLMs are similar. People have to understand, like, what is it actually doing? How can it actually do it? Like, I overheard someone the other day saying, they tried to check if some work had been created by ChatGPT by asking it, did you write this? And of course, there's no way of knowing. He doesn't keep a record of everything. And it'd be a gross breach of privacy laws if it was copying snippets from other people's conversations. But clearly they think it's like a super intelligent agent that can do all of this stuff. So I think it's just education. Like, what do these things do? How do they actually go about doing it? And trying to get people to, like, understand and kind of relate to that. And that's going to be better than bringing in government regulation, because I think, like you said, it's always quite slow and it lags behind. It's always several paces behind where the technological front is. Yeah. But I think society can adjust a bit quicker.
Yeah. But it's interesting because 6 or 7 of those big companies in America recently, last week, have asked the government to step in and do some sort of...
But is that to stop startups? Is that to stop competition? They've already gained the market share.
Possibly.
They're trying to silence any newcomers, maybe, or maybe they're all doing the right thing. I mean,
possibly they're still opaque.
Yeah,
you don't know exactly what are the models that OpenAI have trained their LLMs on.
It's not OpenAI, is it? It's closed AI, really.
Oh, it's closed AI, exactly.
Yeah.
And
GPT-4,
the question is, should that information be public or not?
Yeah. Okay. What's your view on this clip, on this topic, on this complicated mess?
Yeah. So I think you guys have done a really good job of covering, I think, most of the most pertinent points that I'd make. So I'll try and take a slightly different angle. But it's definitely interesting that I think that demo could have been done maybe 10 years ago, maybe even 15, and been exactly identical. Even without LLMs and GPT, RNNs and sequence-to-sequence models were able to do similar things, just were less capable. So just to feed both your points, it's definitely a bit of a red herring, the amount of tension we've driven here. The one thing that I think really interested me was why is it so interesting to people, right? Particularly outside of the tech community, we're kind of preaching to the choir with a lot of the things that we're saying. But outside of that, there is this deep kind of like human thing about personalization and human faces, right? It's kind of the face element and the robotic element that I think really drove the virality of that clip. And it's probably a deeper comment on the human psyche than it is on the technology itself. It's like we want to see ourselves. Like even all of our conversations around like AGI and some of the even more interesting topics still for me feel very kind of human, self-centered, and we think these things will be like us and they'll have wants and needs. And the reality, as you said, there's a huge education gap around these things. And as you said, it's a token predictor. It's not a person. It's not a robot with thoughts and feelings. To go back to your point again, I think education probably is going to be the biggest driver, because it also drives regulation. I think the thing that I fear with a lot of regulation, even though I'm with you that's needed, is they also don't know, right? The people that are making these decisions, and it does work in tandem with the rest of society. We need really open models, as you said, and
I think you can sort that thing out if when you do the regulation, you actually have a broad, diverse group of people.
Yeah.
Helping with that regulation. So it's not only the leaders of OpenAI, Microsoft and all of those, but you get people as diverse as possible from all sorts of backgrounds trying to actually come up with something.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll do a regulation only for some that will satisfy some people and not the others.
Yeah.
But your point is interesting about the robot looking very sort of human. Because actually the LLMs, the ChatGPT is a very interesting thing. And the adoption is also related to the fact that it's a sort of natural language, and it responds in a way that you're expecting someone else to respond to you. Yeah. Even has a sort of tiny little
got
delays and all of that
like
sort of stuff.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And people are expecting that.
Yeah, they're humanizing it. My parents still say please and thank you to their Alexa. It's people humanize.
Why not?
Yeah, exactly.